Simon, welcome. It is 10:30 p.m. Japan Standard Time, and let me just check my sound levels. I maxed them out briefly there. Good to see so many people in the comments, including looks like we've got who's there, Mr. Cordy Chep. Let's put all the live chat on. I set this one up a little bit earlier than usual, so we've got Quint Rankard, Steve from Berkeley. Give me a break, man. Great to have Give Me a Break, man in. Sussex Patrick, also congrats to Give Me a Break, man. They basically ended the state of emergency situation. Doesn't mean Japan's never had a lockdown, of course, as you all know by now, but we have had a state of emergency with enforced social distancing. And Aichi Prefecture, where Victor is, came out of that this week along with 39 other prefectures. I think there was a number. It was basically like there are still 13 that are, which those numbers don't add up correctly, so I must have it a little bit wrong. But yeah, but Aichi Prefecture, in spite of having Nagoya, one of the big cities, they actually came out of it this week. Although of course people are still actually doing social distancing. But yeah, congrats, Victor, on that. We're still waiting to get out of it in Tokyo, and that's what I'm going to talk about a little bit about today. So it is interesting. And actually, it wasn't until I put up kind of a stupid poll, which Victor correctly pointed out how stupid the poll was, because there is an objective predetermined answer to the poll that I put up. But still, it was interesting to put up, and I'm going to go through and explain that tonight, as well as what else is going on. I mean, I wish that there was anything other than this news to talk about. But yes, anyway, we've got that. So good to see you, Victor. We've got Quint Rankard, Tokyo 503, Steve from Berkeley. The Boom is here, yes. Chris Jack, good to see you. The J Vlog, salutations. Oh, I skipped out. Did I say Sussex Patrick? Maybe I didn't. Hey, Sussex Patrick, good to have you in the chat. We've got Jibril Abdirizak Omar, good to see you. Barry, good to see you, Barry. Barry, where are you coming in from? I don't recognize the handle name. Good to have you here. Licking toilet seats again, as Victor. Yes, I didn't realize we could talk about that on the air, but yes, indeed. Tai Nakamura, awesome to see you. Olivia D, good to see you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. And yeah, as usual, there actually isn't a lot of news. There isn't a lot to talk about this week, although I always say that and I always end up filling up the hour. We'll see how we go. Remember, as always, if you want to just get my attention, say hello to me. It's always nice. If you're just joining the comments as well, I love it when people say hello. I like to know who's, it's nice to be able to know the handle names of people who are there. Papa Power, exactly. Be like Papa Power. From Dallas. Awesome to have someone in Dallas watching, and yeah, good to have you there in the chat. Be like Papa Pal. Say hello. I really do appreciate it. Also, remember, if you've got a question or something that you'd like me to talk about, I'm always very happy to, of course, do that. And you can get my attention just by doing @HikoSimon in the comments, and it will flash up orange, and I can see it. So that's a good way to grab my attention. I won't always notice it right away if I'm in the middle of something, but I can see the comments quite a long way back, which means I can catch it even if it's gone off the screen over here. But yeah, interesting week, a lot going on in Japan and in Tokyo. The really big development this week, which is probably it says what's on the screen right now, it's the first thing that I'm going to be talking about actually, is that now we have a concrete formula for when at least the kind of strict social distancing and the kind of business restrictions and so on are going to be eased in Japan. Ori123 met me a couple of years ago. Stu's leaving party. I remember Stu's leaving party. Well, good to see you, Oli123, and thank you for joining the comments. And say hi to Stu if you're still in touch. Awesome guy. Where's Stu? Awesome YouTube channel. You all know who that is. Rainy season 2 weeks early, Hiko Simon says the J Vlog. Not exactly. It's been there's been a typhoon, which is now turned into a tropical depression. It's coming up the country. So yeah, down in Okinawa, they're in rainy season. I don't think anywhere else in Japan is in rainy season yet, but it will start to come up the country. I got distracted because give me a break, man. Give me a thumbs up. Yeah, give me a thumbs up. Oh, give me a like if you like. Give me a thumbs up if that's how you feel about it. But certainly. Quint Rankard, can I talk about Australia's barley trade with China? Quint Rankard, no, I cannot. I wish I could, but I'm not knowledgeable about barley or Australian barley trade with China. I could probably talk more about Australian jandal exports to Portugal than I could talk about barley trade with China. I'm sure in Australia, everybody's getting very hot under the cover about it, but I'm here in Tokyo, and unfortunately that's not grabbing my attention. Maybe feel free to tell me about it in the comments, although I doubt I could get into much of a discussion about it, I'm afraid. We've got Tech Art 2, howdy to Tech Art 2. We've got Sergeant Bilko, good evening to everyone. Remember, please, leave a comment if you're stopping by. And let's come back again into the topics, into the first main topic. Yes, indeed. So yeah, there's a formula. There's a formula now. The experts have sat down and they it looks very scientific. And honestly, it took me like 3 reads to figure it out. And when I figured it out, it's like, oh, is that all that it is? It's really simple. And there's a formula. The formula which the government advisory panel of the scientists and so on, the Dr. Fauci's of Japan, who's Dr. Omi in Japan, by the way, although there's a few guys. There's the 80% old dude, Oyaji, literally the Hachiwari Oji-san, who's the guy who believes that, to have any chance of fighting this, you have to reduce social contact, people to people, by 80%. And there's Dr. Omi. There's this guy who's sort of is the guy who stands up at all the government press conferences and gives a scientific view. They came up with a number, and the formula is that in order to reduce the state of emergency, or to end the state of emergency in any one of the 47 prefectures in Japan, and all but 13 have this week on Thursday ended early based on meeting this criteria. There are 2 standards. There is the there's the hard standard, which is basically that you have to have 0.5 new cases. Now, what is it? Over a week. In a whole week, you have to have an average of 0.5 cases per 100,000 people population. So what does that mean? That means in Tokyo, which Tokyo Prefecture, although, when you talk about Tokyo's population, there's different ways to cut it, because all the prefectures that are adjacent are all part of like a single city. Yokohama, Kanagawa is attached, Chiba is attached, Saitama, parts of Saitama are attached. But Tokyo has 14 million people in terms of the prefecture. So you've got 14 million people. So if you say 0.5 people per 100,000 over a week, that means if there are 70 cases, less than 70 cases in a week, that's the hard line by which they will, by which the government's announced that they will end social distancing, or end the state of, not social distancing, we'll come to that. That's when they will be able to drop the state of emergency in Tokyo. And it's by that criteria that Victor is licking toilet seats once again, because that's the criteria that Aichi meets. Of course, based on Aichi's population, which is less than Tokyo. But yeah, also right now, Osaka and Tokyo and Hokkaido, the 3 main regions. The adjacent prefectures to Osaka are still under this. I believe Hyogo, which is where Kobe is, and Kyoto are attached, even though Kyoto actually meets the criteria because it's so interconnected with Osaka. And it'll be the case with the prefectures around Tokyo as well, even if they meet this criteria before Tokyo does. Because so many people live in Saitama and Chiba and commute into Tokyo, it'll be until there's like 70 cases in a week. So the situation I counted for today, well, then there's a second criteria. A second possible criteria is you can do it if it's 1 person per 100,000, i.e. in Tokyo, 140 people over a week. If all the cases are traced and known where they are, and there's an overall declining trend. Now, by today's count, I think I tweeted this, and I think I did the math. It all adds up. The last 7 days adds up to 111 cases, I think it is. So we're actually below the second threshold, but this would only be the case like if all the cases were in a single hospital and we knew where it was and overall cases were coming down. It'd be like it gives some flexibility for if, for all intents and purposes, the numbers are really high, but they're not random cases and we still don't know where it's coming from, that we could close it if it's above the 70 cases threshold. But essentially what we're looking for is 70 in a rolling week, which means basically an average throughout 7 days, remembering that there are less test numbers on Sunday and Monday because they reflect results that are from tests that are from the weekend. But if we can go through a whole week with an average of single digits in Tokyo, it means that we can end the state of emergency. And by this criteria, most of the countries open up. And if you think about it, so for example, for New Zealand, that would mean for the entire country, I think it's 5 million people. Now, I always think of New Zealand as 3 million people, but, somewhere along the line, I don't know if people, sheep converted into people or something like that, but we got 2 million extra people. The population has grown a lot. In fact, I think it's like 4 million, but let's just say it's 5 million. If it's that, there would have to be less than 25 cases over a whole week in New Zealand, i.e. an average of like 3.5 cases per day. Below that, we'd be comfortable, which is, I think, about the level that, in fact, is probably even lower than that. I think some new cases came up recently, but this is where New Zealand's ending lockdown. So it's fairly equivalent, I think, to the same standards that are being applied to ending lockdowns overseas. And of course, we don't have a lockdown here. Does that mean the end of social distancing? No, but what it means is that the government will dictate will allow the prefectures who have decided to put the restrictions on in the first place. They decide who to ask, which businesses to ask to close or to refrain from business, and for people to sort of stay at home. So they'll leave it up to the, basically they've said there has to be a new normal, which is the same everywhere, that there is no vaccine. The disease is still not even known. Every day we're finding out something new about this thing. So people don't know how it operates. People are talking about Kawasaki disease, which I actually found really interesting to learn. I assumed that was like Minamata disease or Yokkaichi disease, or Wuhan disease. I mean, whatever you want to call it. I thought it was named after a location because, of course, Kawasaki is a city adjacent to Tokyo. But actually, it's named after Dr. Kawasaki from Tokyo University Hospital, who discovered this condition in kids, which is basically generated by a hyper overactive immune system, is my understanding. And this is happening with kids, and now there's warnings going out about that. But yeah, it's been a really interesting week. I mean, again, I've fought for so long against talking or having this become dominated by talking about this, but it's been an interesting week, and there are some updates. So where we are at the moment, Tokyo is continuing to see numbers go down. We actually had 5 new cases today. Granted, it's from a weekend, so it doesn't really count. But even before the weekend, we were getting down to 14 people, and the cases are coming down a lot. We had one day where it jumped up to 30, but 27 of those cases were from one known cluster in a hospital. So it's definitely getting better. There we go, Tokyo 503, thank you. New Zealand population, same population as Ireland, 4.9, which has always been about the same, which is why I guess Ireland is a good rugby team. But Kyushu cats are demanding to be let out. Mr. Cordy Chep, yes, I am on time. But yes, so in terms of where we are at, the thing is that currently the state of emergency, the national state of emergency, which Tokyo is using to ask businesses to close, is going to go until May 31st. At least that's when it was scheduled for. But now that they've announced this criteria, that they actually ended the state of emergency early for all the other prefectures that already met this criteria. And if Tokyo gets to this point, Barringer, that's a slight overstatement, although there are a lot of us New Zealanders in Australia. But yeah, there is. If we get to that point earlier, it could see on current trends, we could be in that below 70 in a week zone at the moment. Of course, this is the problem. People don't understand the nature of the disease. The problem is, as well, as people become relieved and as businesses think, okay, this thing's about to end, we can start to have people go back to the office or whatever. That is, of course, going to increase the risk again. But this is the other thing I like about having this criteria, is that it also means, obviously, if it goes over that again, that's a pretty clear criteria for deciding when we need to reintroduce measures. And I get the feeling we're going to be having 3rd and 4th and 5th waves. We haven't had our 2nd wave yet. But I think until there is a surefire vaccine or a way to resolve this, we can't switch the economy off forever, and if there are no cases, there's no justification for it. But until we can figure out that right balance of how to adequately be self-responsible about social distancing, until we can get that balance sort of right, maybe get more testing, maybe get more, this is why governments are deploying these contact tracing apps. Until we can get that under control, that we can be operating, sort of with businesses working, but in a way that doesn't allow the disease to spread, we might go back into another state of emergency situation. And Hokkaido's the one part of Japan that went early into a state of emergency and came out of it and then went into it again, and they're still in it again now. So, they're ahead of the curve here. And Korea's just gone into a 2nd wave as well. And I think it's without question going to happen here in Tokyo. People here have been, again, we haven't been locked down, but people have been, basically not going out, not going to work, or working remotely, or not working at all, and not having any money, and not hanging out with their friends, unless they're idiots. You can't get arrested for it here like you can in other countries. But assuming people have been doing as they've been told, it's been a long time. It's been since the first week of March. So 2.5 months, So it's foreseeable that people are going to go out and be idiots, I think, when this sort of thing eases. But what governments are asking for is to kind of establish a new set of norms, that we are not going to go back to any sort of exactly like it was before. But we are going to go back. They're going to have probably staged. They're going to manage how people go back to work. They're going to manage how gyms and karaoke bars and nightclubs reopen. Immediately, I think what happened in Korea, which is one of the things I've got in here, is definitely going to happen here, which is that straight after the very tight restrictions over there were lifted. Well, tight. They didn't have a lockdown there either. They did do it all through very aggressive testing and contact tracing. But they had this incident at a nightclub, specifically. It seems like it was a large gay bar, where turned out to be a cluster where there were 3,000 people in this bar. So it must have been an enormous bar, and there was something like 150 cases that came out of it, and they're finding more now, and people who got cases from those cases. In a way, and this was actually on NHK News tonight, exactly the concerns about contact tracing, about the handling of personal information. This has already happened in Nagoya, in Aichi Prefecture, where a city worker, where when you get the disease in Japan, although we don't have contact tracing apps and we're not doing a lot of testing, there are people from the health bureaus spread all over the country whose job it is to figure out the history of who are all the people that you've been in contact with, and to chase them up and go and get those people tested, basically try to figure out the history of people that you've been in contact with during the incubation period, which I think is treated as 2 weeks. So people have already pointed out in Aichi Prefecture, they've already screwed this up once. They actually accidentally posted onto the internet the names, addresses, workplace, as well as the the contact tracing history that they were investigating, and the relationships of all the people that they were tracing, of each one of the people who have this in Aichi Prefecture. I mean, it was a horrific data leak. Part of my job involves working with Japan privacy law, and it is actually quite strict, except the government is exempt from any penalty under the law. So, if a private company screws this up, there are serious fines, naming, shaming, penalties, and the requirements of the law are very strict. And I really think it should apply to the government as well, because this sort of thing can't happen, because they have so much sensitive information. And the story that came out on the news tonight was exactly the LGBT community in Japan is kind of afraid, because there are cases already happening where people have sort of discovered that their family member is out because of this, where they were basically outed before they were ready to be. Korea's responded to this interestingly by setting up anonymous testing for the first time. But yeah, there's a lot of talk in Japan, which is a lot more sensitive than Korea and Taiwan anyway, about the idea of enforcing the sort of contact tracing and the sort of tracking on mobile apps and stuff like that, as well as the fact, that Japan doesn't believe it's constitutionally possible to even have any sort of a lockdown. So it could be seen as soft, but it's also kind of very careful about this sort of thing. But people sort of recognize that we're probably not going to be able to live with this thing, be able to go back to having jobs and a moving economy and incomes and so on, without some way to manage living with the disease. And this is really sort of the way that people seem to agree it needs to be done. But yeah, really, really, really interesting. But look, for me, I actually feel kind of great that at least for now, again, we don't understand how this thing works and how it spreads, and it could turn south any moment. And I actually almost think it's a certainty. It's like there's going to be an earthquake in Japan. There's no way there is not going to be a second wave. People are going to go straight for the love hotels. They're going to go straight for the mizu shobai places, the hostess cabaret bars, and everything escalating from that. I think people who have been socially responsibly staying home for 2.5 months, it's natural that there's going to be a counterbalance to that. And I think we're going to get a second wave like almost right away. I'm hoping that we can sort of figure out some way to manage it. And the government right now has actually finally, it's taken a long time. People talking about the inadequate numbers of tests. The government's gone and approved saliva tests, which people will be able to give themselves, which they're going to administer in hundreds of thousands, they're saying. They're also preparing 400,000 antibody, or actually they want to be able to do, I saw a number which was crazy. It was like they want to be 400,000 antibody tests per day or per week or some number like that they're preparing to be able to see how the spread through the community. The government's already started surveying who has antibodies indicating antigens, indicating that they've already had the disease. And when they did this, only 1,000 people so far, but as a statistical sample, they did this in Tokyo, and they found it was like, what was the number? 0.4%, which indicates that although the official number is like 3,000 people in Tokyo, probably about 87,000 people had it, which, if true, the death number, the mortality number in Japan being 200, or in Tokyo being 200, just over 200, 212, I think today, indicates that, again, the mortality rate is very low in Japan, which is a relief, but nobody understands why or how we got into the situation. A lot of people are saying that, the whole strategy's been flawed, but we've been lucky, and maybe that's true. But yeah, what I at least appreciate is that it looks like, for example, I'll be able to go back to work soon. I'm sure I'm still going to be working from home a lot of the time. I'm lucky I can do that. And I'm sure it won't be, and I won't want to be going on a crowded train. I'm going to go late, or I'm going to go early, and I'm lucky. It seems to be established common sense now that you don't want to be dropping people right into subway rush hours, and we need to be more flexible around. We need to continue to allow teleworking and whatnot, but people are still figuring that out. But yeah. Anyway, we'll see. Lots of people commenting that indeed it's already turn south, that already did southern hemisphere, then it will turn the winter season. Well, that's right. I mean, and look, people are going to be idiots. People talking about already, I'm a little bit sympathetic, at least to the need to get out, to go see the beach, to go somewhere even on your own or something like that, and feel like if I'm keeping distance from other people, I'm being okay. It still is really stupid to do that, and I know people in Tokyo who are frankly taking advantage of the non-lockdown situation to do that sort of thing and posting about it, and it's really stupid. But there again, people have been cooped up for a long time, and I really think I've been thinking a bit lately. It's a bit like on Survivor, where they or on those Naked and Afraid. I love those kind of shows where they stick them on an island with no food for 3 weeks, and they come off and they're not used to like eating anything other than like coconut bark and rats for a few weeks. And the first thing they do when they finish the whole thing is they go to a hotel and they want to gorge themselves. And all the doctors say, no, don't do that. You have to have you have to have cabbage and mince because your body can't handle anything more than that. And they say, screw you. And they all talk about how they all get themselves really sick the night after, because after having the doctor's appointed meal, it's like after the Kenko Shindan in Japan, where you have to starve yourself for a day before the Kenko Shindan. And it means that you get really hungry and you get a meal ticket, which I remember for the one that I go to, I got a ticket to go to TGI Fridays in Roppongi. And I was like, oh, cool, they sent me to TGI Fridays. Well, awesome, I'm just going to get the sundae and the hamburger. But, of course, the ticket is for a fixed meal that the medical checkup center gives to you. And it's literally like hospital food that they give you. They just serve it in this place. It's obviously a little side business that they have. And I think a lot of people are going to be ordering the chocolate sundaes and the hamburgers. I think that's what's going to happen, and it's going to be, hopefully we can minimize the damage of that, but we can see a way out. And, I canceled my trip to Australia for the end of July. I hope we're going to be out of this in Tokyo, and Australia too in June. What I think is going to happen though is that it's going to come back again. I mean, it's just unavoidable. So cancelling the tickets was unavoidable, and Qantas wasn't flying anyway. But yeah. Anyway, so good news, and there's clear criteria. For Tokyo, the magic number is a rolling 7-day total of 70 people, or 140, and where all the cases are concentrated and known and it's otherwise declining. So we're already under the 140 threshold, and we're heading towards the 70 threshold. In a city of 40 million people, it's pretty good. So anyway, that's a good thing. A lot of commentary like this. This one from Foreign Policy today. Japan's half-hearted coronavirus measures are working anyway. So, I mean, there's so much interesting information about this, and I really don't want to turn into, I've already said it once, a COVID-19 freak. But, oh yes, I owe an apology to the people of the United Kingdom. It was pointed out to me that last week I was, my sister lives in the UK. She lives in London. And I don't know for what reason I did it, because I should know better. I do definitely know a lot better. But I was reading eikoku, or igirisu. I guess when I'm reading Japanese, it just pops up. It's like the Netherlands in Japanese is Oranje. It makes you say Holland because you're reading Holland, even though you know that that's not the Netherlands. And it's the same. I think I said England like 3 or 4 times, and some Scottish separatist nationalists got very upset, and they tweeted me. Well, actually, no, they were quite respectful, and they did point out that the UK and England are not the same thing. And I'm like, of course I know that. Why are you telling me that? I know much better. I could not have said such a thing. What are you talking about? And I was about to say that, and then I realized, you know what? I'm going to... I said, where did I say that? And they said, you said it when you were talking about the national numbers last week. And I watched the video back, and I was like, oh crap, I did say that. I apologize. I'm not going to get into the whole Scottish separatist question, or the Welsh separatist question, or the Cornish separatist question, or the Irish unification question, or any of that. I have heritage from all sides. A lot of Wales, actually. Well, kind of Wales. Well, anyway, I'm not going to get into that. I guess I do. I don't, not from Cornwall, that I know about anyway, except by marriage. But yes, I did definitely say England instead of the UK, and I apologize for that. It's that was terrible. So yes, anyway, coming back to this, a lot of people are saying, well, Japan's kind of did a crappy job, but we're getting through it anyway. And again, it is inviting. It's an awkward thing, because the moment you start to think, well, what is Japan doing that's different? Because it certainly isn't locking down or testing better than anywhere else at all. So what is it doing that's producing these results of fewer numbers? Apart from the conspiracy theorists, which again, I mean, you talk about these conspiracy, people saying they're hiding the numbers. They got the bodies must be piling up, and they're just not counting them. And then the statistics came out. How every country can estimate the number of deaths by the difference in mortality, where 50,000 people more than usual died in January or whatever in some countries. So they did this for Japan, and it turned out that in March, it was actually slightly more than average. It was like 102%, 103% in January, February, and I think in April as well. But in March, it was like 92% the normal fatalities, the normal mortality. There were actually 8% people less than usual dying in March, which is like the peak month that we had coronavirus at least showing up in the stats here in Japan. Bye, McNeil. Good to see you, sir. Welcome. And Bob Turner. Good to see you. But yeah. So we actually had in total for this whole period that we've had the coronavirus in Japan. They call it coronavirus in Japanese. It's COVID-19, I know, and again, it's just a habit because I just read coronavirus all day in Japanese. But yeah, we've actually had less mortality than usual, probably because people have not been catching other diseases like influenza or whatnot, because we've all been locking ourselves up. So it's actually kind of so I made a snarky joke, which I got slightly, I got a bit of blowback for from people saying when I pointed out it looks like the Japanese people were in on the government conspiracy to fix the numbers by purposely not dying. Yeah, that was a little bit harsh, but honestly, when you got people who, it's one thing to not trust politicians, I get that, but when you are accusing an entire scientific statistics gathering system of being like being untrustworthy, well, then you're basically on the freaking Ancient Aliens, series, pretty much. If you ask me, you're talking about you're combining your mistrust of of information. You're an anti-vaxxer at that point. I mean, it's okay to not trust. It's okay to be a skeptic. It's okay to question. But to say I'm not going to accept that the numbers are what the government says that they are, they must be fixing them because of the Olympics. And why do you think that? And can you even read Japanese? And are you suggesting that every health bureau in the country and every testing lab and every doctor and every statistician is in on the conspiracy? And people are, I just don't trust the government. I don't trust any of the numbers. They're hiding it. They're trying to fix the numbers. And again, then even when they're not dying, as I said, they must be on the conspiracy. And some people said, "Are you saying that about me?" And I don't think I wasn't saying it about anyone in particular, but anyone who was saying that, I think, yeah. I mean, it is. You got to separate your general mistrust of authority. I mean, from data. I mean, and even if the data, we know all the caveats about the data. Japan's had a high gating criteria, that they've only been testing the most serious cases. We know that. But so long as they've been doing it consistently, you can still identify a trend. It still has value as scientific data. And no, I'm not. Of course, I know all the flaws in the data. But it's data, and it's all that we have. So simply saying, Japan must be doing it all wrong. It's also particularly aggravating when most of the people lecturing about this sort of thing and lecturing, you know, the old missionary zeal that I'm a foreigner, I'm here to tell Japan everything that they're doing wrong, which I know because I read what we should be doing in the papers and, you know, on Facebook from my country. Well, you know, if you're from Europe or you're from America, um, they're having problems as well. You know, I'm not saying that Japan has it all figured out, and I'm not saying that Japan couldn't become exactly like in America or Europe. No, that could happen tomorrow. And what they're dealing with over there is terrible. But the idea that you got to come here and lecture everything and dismiss the data is just the attitude gets me. The attitude gets me. You know, it is good to see that Japan is definitely improving. They're taking the lessons of their neighbors. They're looking at bringing in the Singaporean contact tracing app. They're basically going to be rolling that out soon. We now have antigen testing, and we're going to have a whole lot more PCR testing. It's taken way too long. It's way too late. The response has been ridiculous, and Abe's population has gone down. But here's the thing. A lot of people in other countries whose popularity has gone up have much worse results. So, you know, I'm not defending Japan. I'm just pointing out I'm still glad I'm here, you know, still at this point. Although that said, to be a New Zealander, you know, it's great for my dad to be in New Zealand right now. Again, still not a great situation there, but, you know, they've done a wonderful job as a country, and I don't claim any part of it. I've been away from 21 years. I barely even have an accent. At least I don't have an accent that's recognized by New Zealanders as an accent anymore. I don't feel like I can really claim very much of New Zealand anymore, but it's, yeah, go team. You know, they did the country really did a great job on that. But again, same situation. It can bounce back there just like it could here. So, you know. Anyway, Bald Billets boy, where is your Abidal mask? I don't know. I still have an open mind. I got some. Yeah, I've been like running. I started running. Oh yeah, that was so awesome. Because I tore my bloody Achilles. When I went running, like in the very start, back in the start of March of working from home, I went out for a run. I ran too fast. I wasn't fit. I tore my Achilles. I spent 2 months. I spent 3 days, basically laid up completely. I couldn't even walk around the house. And then I spent 2 months where even on walking, I could feel it. It was still popping and cracking and stuff. And it finally got good enough. I've just tested it like for a week of running. It's slowly building it up, and it's been great. But I'm wearing a mask while running, and that sucks. I guess it's like low oxygen training. It's, you know, it's good for that. But yes. Peter Alexander, nice to have you in the comments, I think. That's right, Tokyo 503. I still think the population of New Zealand is 3 billion people, which frankly, I don't think it even was when I left the country. But you know what? I don't think we were 4 million when well, maybe we were. Someone's going to Wikipedia the history of New Zealand's population. I'm going to be proven wrong, but yeah. 4.88 million. But you know what? I don't think we had 4.88 million in December 1998 when I left the country. And hell, that's 22 years ago. That's so depressing saying that out loud. Yeah. They're probably there. Well, I know I have a very sophisticated audience, so maybe some of you are born after that, but maybe not many. I don't even know how to pick up sheep anymore. Well, you know, it's like riding a bicycle, but what can you do? So yeah, Japan is doing okay. Yeah, indeed. Tokyo's had a good run. We've gone like a long ototoi Suzuki. Yeah, we've had a number of days this week where we've had single digits. So the numbers are good. I've been, so my running, this is from today. So yeah, now, it doesn't show up here. Can I show it there? Yeah, so I found a nice flat 5.3. I ran up a hill and I ran 4-minute kilometers. I was running really fast, but I destroyed my legs in the process. So I've been slowing down, although 5.3 minutes a kilometer is not bad. I mean, when I was in high school, and I ran cross country, I could run 3-minute kilometers on a flat 5K, on a race. That was the fastest I ever did, and I'd always aim for 4. So I've been kind of taking it easy, but yeah, I didn't have a bad run actually today, and I've kind of gotten that up. So I'm very happy with how I'm running. Also, VAM. I always like taking that before I run. The marathon runners actually got promoted this. Takahashi Naoko, marathon runner. I think she was doing this. This is actually made with the enzymes from murder hornet stomachs. Apparently they figured out that suzumebachi, the sparrow hornets, the enormous hornets in Japan, they can fly really long distances, and they're really good at making their energy sort of last, and they can fly long distances without needing to stop or feed. So apparently some people from one of the drink companies researched this, and they figured out the kind of chemicals that they have that apparently enable this extra stamina, and they created this drink VAM. And it's grapefruit flavored. It's lovely, and it got me good times. Not that great times, but anyway, I thought I'd put that out rather than where I am. Yeah, it's fun. It feels great to be running again. Again, we can do that because we're not that locked down. I've been doing that every second day. I'm really looking forward to kickboxing again. That's what I'm looking forward to the most. I think gyms, and even if the state of emergency ends, gyms are not going to come open probably for a while. I'm resigned to that, and there's nothing really more likely. If there's anything I do in my life, I don't live a very exciting life anymore, other than this, of course. So really, probably the closest, the thing I could do that would bring me in the most danger of catching coronavirus would probably be kickboxing. And you know what? I really still can't wait to do it again. So this is what's motivating me to run, is I just want to get in shape so I don't embarrass myself when I go back to getting punched in the face. I mean, that's embarrassing enough, but yes, I will do that. Legal doping indeed, Iraq, you've got it exactly. Oh yeah. So I caught up yesterday. I watched The Last Dance. That's pretty good. I mean, I'm such a fan of Ozark. I'm such a fan of Better Call Saul, and I hate myself when I binge watch, and I've been trying to keep my sleep score good, so I really have been careful about this. But yeah, The Last Dance is good, and it's not so much that the documentary. I mean, it is a good documentary, and there's a lot about the story of that team that is just like, to me. So that Chicago Bulls team. I mean, here's the situation for me. That 1992 Bulls team, like when I think MJ was already there, but when Pippen came on and when these players sort of started to become really big, New Zealand only had two TV channels, and we had WWF and we had NBA. Our TV programming at that time was the highest proportion of international TV in the world. It was all American and British. British on Channel 1 and American on Channel 2. And we just watched whatever they pushed at us, and they pushed NBA. We had NBA in New Zealand, and everybody watched it. And I think I was very lucky that I was in a high school watching, and university. And just when cable came out, when ESPN came out, everyone was just watching, if they weren't watching rugby, they were watching basketball. And at that time, you had this going on. So I watched these games. And I wouldn't consider myself a huge basketball fan, but hell, when you got the Bulls in 1992 and 1993, and sort of watch what's going on in the background from all of that, for me, I mean, I remember those games, and it's just incredible. It is funny how, it humanizes Michael Jordan in a way that I think is good and necessary. The thing is, everybody just thought he was just this person who was just so head and shoulders above everybody else and just naturally talented and gifted, and he could just jump and stay in the air longer than everyone else. I find it really funny how he manages to boil down every story about every key game, that he basically just found a way to feel resentment at somebody on the other team. Even if he had to cook it up for himself, he'd just do it, and he'd put on these spectacular performances basically out of spite. But look, I practice law. I understand what that means. Again, the hero of a story is always like got this sort of noble kind of aim for winning. But that's not how it works. No, you fire yourself up. You figure out some way to get getting angry. I've played my best rugby games angry and concussed. You do crazy shit when you get like that, and he's just very good at pushing himself to that level. It's amazing. Shubhas, good to see you. Still watching Better Call Saul. Is there a Just Call Saul? But yes, that is a. Bayer knows what he's talking about there. Better Call Saul is just, and the thing about Better Call Saul, I've said this before, I'll say it again, like, it was good. It was good in the beginning. It was a slow burn. It was kind of building up. It was kind of the thing with the brother, okay, I get it. But you know how, like, Battlestar Galactica, Lost, every awesome, mind-blowing new TV show, they hit about the third season and they switch the writers and they don't know how many seasons they're going to get, and they have to think, how do I draw this thing out? And it always falls off at the third season. Better Call Saul picks up, I mean, the fourth season and the fifth season. I'm just like, whoa. And you know why it works? It works because they're only going to have 6 seasons. and they've got a hard stop. They're going to crash into the Breaking Bad timeline. There's no way they can go, and we know that we're right in front of it at the end of the latest episodes. And the other thing that I love about Better Call Saul, sorry, I just love this thing so much. Again, another flaw of so much TV is that you become so focused on the main character, and you assume it's all about the main character, and everyone around them are extras trying to have interesting parts. And what I love about where Better Call Saul is now, where it's been all along, is that the central character is not the focus of the story. I mean, he carries it through. You're following him, but you realize that you're more invested in Kim, you're more invested in Nacho, you're more invested in Lalo. Those three side characters who were not large characters. Some of them weren't involved at all. Lalo wasn't involved until late in the piece. They weren't even they're not in Breaking Bad, and we're about to run into that timeline, and you realize they're all going to be gone, and you have no idea how they're going to be gone. And it's just like, it's an ensemble, it's a true ensemble thing, and it's really brave of production and writers to invest in making sure that you've got these rich, really interesting characters that are just getting more and more interesting. It's just awesome the way that they built it up. So Shivers, keep watching it, because well, now I feel like I'm overselling it, but it is one of my favorite things ever, actually. And it's not the legal thing. It's not. It's the characters. They are indeed by. I like it better than Breaking Bad. I like Breaking Bad, but I did binge watch it, which was a terrible mistake. And I found by like season 5, I was getting fatigued by Breaking Bad. I was kind of wondering, like, okay, how much longer is this going to go on? And watching the decline of one guy, as much as, again, the side characters were always interesting, which is why we're so glad we have Better Call Saul, but it was still over-focused on the main character, and it felt like it went on for too long. It doesn't feel like that with this, so I'm like, wow. Tokyo 503, well, I don't know. Well, there's a point, apparently, again, I got so into this, I started following the Twitter feeds. Apparently, the very first line that Saul ever said in Better Call Saul was, he asked Walter White or whoever, or he was saying to somebody, oh no, was that Lalo? So there's a kind of an implication that Lalo, like he's still living in fear of Lalo, or he's living in fear of Lalo for some reason, and it's not clear if he's around or not when Breaking Bad starts. So I don't know if they were thinking this far ahead, but he just tossed out the name Lalo in his very first line in Breaking Bad. It's so good. Anyway, sorry, but back to this. So yes, I'm for all of that. The Last Dance is awesome just for what. Yeah, I think the stories are actually really, really good. So I'm enjoying watching that. I'm watching Trial by Media like right now. Again, interesting. It's kind of I get a bit tired of the true crime genre, but yeah, it's pretty good. But nothing really earth-shattering. What I've really been actually appreciating more, like I say in this tweet, is I love the content on YouTube. I'm just following, especially what I love is there are so many people who do history stuff. And what I love about the history stuff is there are some places like Extra Credits and this like overly sarcastic productions, and all kinds of different history stuff. But there is joy for me in learning about stuff I've never heard of before, like big things. Just like there are so many awesome documentaries about people. I heard the story of Ibn Battuta recently, who I never heard of. Ibn Battuta, like he was like a Moroccan traveler in the 13th century, basically like a Moroccan Marco Polo, who they decided to do 5 episodes on. And this guy, and he wasn't an explorer, he was traveling on sort of trade routes, but he basically went from Morocco across Africa to Mecca, and then he went like through Iran, and then he went into Mongolia, where he stayed with some Khans. Then he went to India, where he actually worked in the court of the Maharaja in Delhi. And then he went to China and Indonesia, and then he went back, and then the Sultan of Morocco, or the king, I guess it was, had him write out and apparently everybody in the Muslim world, apparently he's like the Marco Polo of that world. He wrote a huge book which everyone knows about. But it's amazing. I'd never even heard of it. And it's like, wow, I just discovered. We think that we have a knowledge of the whole world around us, and there's so much stuff out there. And I really appreciate that there's so many people on YouTube. I really feel like TV, like the History Channel, and are coming to an end. They don't show information anymore. They just show crappy reality stuff. And there's so many regular people just grabbing a microphone and teaching history. And there's so much stuff out there. And there's so much to learn out there. I'm getting so much joy out of YouTube during all of this. So yeah, I'm finding I am watching Netflix every now and then, but I'm actually getting really drawn into it. I'm also loving even the regular fun content. I still love watching Up to Speed every week, where they just did the Toyota 86, the GT 86 GT or whatever the other day. It's, so I think YouTube is still awesome. Japan, you might appreciate this. There is a there's a theory on Japan that I have put out. Which is that Japanese are indeed incredibly racist people, but they are most racist towards each other. There's this funny thing. I mean, yeah, there is definitely prejudice like ingrained in the culture of some parts of Japan, and some of the friendliest, nicest parts of Japan. The more rural you go, it can be like this. But perfect case here in Kumamoto. Kumamoto and Kagoshima in Kyushu both have like no cases, or at least these particular towns that are neighboring each other. These are like towns across the state line. And apparently there is still now repeated cases of cars from one town in Kumamoto that has no COVID-19 cases being seen with the car number plate numbers indicating that they're from this town in Kagoshima, in this town in Kumamoto, just across the border. And these cars are getting keyed, they're getting eggs thrown at them. And this is happening, like this has been a problem in Kagawa Prefecture and other prefectures as well, where people are having stones thrown at them, their houses vandalized, they're getting lynched. Foreigners can get a hard time, but seriously, they save the lynching for each other. Like, anyone from out of town, at least if you're a foreigner, they're going to be polite to you. They're going to act nice. But if you've got like a Fukuoka number plate and you're driving into Kumamoto right now, you better have those A-team, bulletproof, welded barriers on your car by the sounds of it, because they're not messing around. They're really being nasty down there. Virus vigilantes, indeed, they are a part, unfortunately, not just of Japan, a lot of places right now. These sort of, but yes, there's a lot of people down there just being kind of dickheads. But unfortunately, it happens. This is crazy, right? Weekly, 400,000 antigen tests weekly. Again, this isn't a PCR test. This is not to find out who has the disease, to find out who has had the disease, to have an idea. Because one of the theories running around was that maybe Japan just had a really mild form of the disease. Everyone got it without noticing, and maybe the reason that the mortality rate in Japan is so low is that maybe there's already herd immunity. Well, they did this for 1,000 cases in Tokyo, and they found numbers that indicate there's no way that we have herd immunity at all here. Although it does seem certainly, apparently now, like the most widespread version of the virus. There's like a Chinese version and there's a European version. There are like three main strains of it, and apparently it's the European one that's gone all over America. I don't know what we have here in Japan, but looking at the rates in America and Europe, it looks like they've got the really nasty one, and we might have a different one here. I don't know, But yeah, Quinn Rankin, what about truckers? Good question. Well, I don't know. Would you key it or throw eggs at a truck? I think then you'd have to, your problem after that would be then you've got to deal with an angry trucker. I think it's probably easier to hit a K car with, some old people in it. I mean, I'm sure, again, I don't know. If you want to go, I've seen enough movies that I'm not about to start scratching up trucks. But yeah, you can try that. And then polls showing that people are not happy with Abe's result, although we're getting good results. Tai Nakamura there in the comments. Tokyo Digital Crew, we've actually, lots of people putting out lots of stuff lately. Fog just put an awesome track up on his YouTube channel. Ben Duncan made an awesome metal track, like really well produced, and people are actually talking about the quality of his drums, he programmed, and he was playing guitar on it. But yeah, you got some people. There's some people in this sort of group. Tai Nakamura is just incredibly musical. You've got Mata Gaijinka's been putting out incredible tracks actually that she's been making with Caustic. Just deep and layered, like real 90s sort of ambient sort of techno stuff, which I've loved remixing. I've loved pulling out little parts of it and just making it a boomps track. But yeah, we've got Ben Duncan sort of kind of gotten back in on it. There's a guy called Sunny IL who's like from Indiana, I believe, and he's been posting a lot of himself. He's just been making sort of breaks, and he comes from a breaking background, and he's been making these sort of tracks, and he's been setting these challenges to do a remix every day and to do breaking. And I said, hey, dude, you want to come in and swap notes with us? I'm learning lots of stuff from these other people. Do you want to get in on this? And he was like, yeah. So, yeah, welcome to the group, Sunny IL, DJ Sunny Side Up. And yeah, it's actually awesome to have someone else as well, to have someone from a dedicated hip hop breakbeat, or breaks background, which I love as well. I've been setting myself a challenge of making some kind of chill house type sounds, getting good with the keyboard and getting good with GarageBand and other apps. And I want to kind of get that sorted out and make that sort of smoothly and quickly so I could do it live here. I'm not going to have time tonight. And then I want to go into making some proper drum and bass. Again, that's really my thing. But yeah, that's what we've been doing. But it is another upside of the lockdown, that it's been nice getting involved with that group again and everybody being really creative and swapping lots of stuff and letting me remix some tracks. It's been really, really fun. Same old BS, that the WHO is about to have a big meetup. Lots of countries, including New Zealand, Japan, and the United States, are all saying, hey, let Taiwan have a seat. They've done a good job with this. They have 20 million people. And China said, no way, Jose. I've talked about this at length before. You understand. Tokyo, for China, essentially, technically and politically, there's two problems. One, Korea, Taiwan and China. Taiwan is still technically a competing government of China. It's an alternate government of China. They're not claiming, although really they've started to settle into form of saying that they really are just for Taiwan now. But they've never formally taken the position of arguing that Taiwan is separate to China. And China's like, no separatists allowed. And you sat in the China seat in the UN for 30 years, and screw you, it's payback time, and we're not going to let you sit in and pretend that there's any slight on our legitimacy. So China's, I kind of get it, but again, the result is that it's kind of stupid to be holding Taiwan out of these sort of meetings, and it's good that WHO is under a lot of pressure for this. And remember as well, although China is only the third biggest contributor to the WHO, the US and Japan seem to be exercising their sort of pressure over the WHO. Tedros, Ethiopia did not get its delegate or he's not very China friendly. It's not just because of China's funding for the WHO, it's China's funding for Africa. China's invested huge amounts in loans and infrastructure investment in Africa, where which is a continent which has been screwed over by predatory development aid from Europe at times. The other point, of course, is that also there are some governments in Africa which, do not meet Western standards for sort of human rights and transparency, and China's offering money to everybody. And so, there are deep. China's playing a long game with this, but there's reasons that they have influence which go beyond the WHO. That's just simply a result. But it's an interesting debate. Any outcome though that Taiwan can't participate is just ridiculous. Anyway, I don't see it as a personal issue with Tedros at all. It's a difficult situation there. But whatever it is, I mean, it's not just Tedros. Remember, it's every representative of the WHO doesn't want to piss China off, and it's been a sensitive issue. But Taiwan should be there. We've talked about the bullying thing. I talked about keying cars and whatever, not just exclusive to Japan, but certainly this is a big thing in Japan, that there is a lot of shaming and bullying associated with this. A lot of people running, a lot of advice on running. The standard advice that the government's giving through NHK is if you are running, run 1.5 meters away from people beside you, and if you are running, run 10 meters in front or behind of other runners. Don't bunch up because you're stinky and emitting like sweat and tears and bodily fluids, so don't do that. Be careful. Peter Alexander, I don't know what you're saying. They never make eye contact to the most hiding in their bubble fools in Japan. Taiwan is China. I don't know. Anyway, Peter Alexander, you're free to say whatever you like, but ease up with the all caps. And I don't want to strike you. I don't think that's a strike. Anyway, you're allowed to disagree, but ease up with the all caps, dude. So yeah. Anyway, I'm looking forward to running. I'm looking forward to getting back to the gym, but that's going to be a while yet. So another thing that's been happening while all this has been going on, there's been two laws that have been passed or going through Parliament right now that have actually been drawing a lot of attention. I do like to talk about what's going on in Japanese politics, and there's two. One is the state secrets law, which actually I thought was passed a long time ago, but Japan doesn't actually have a state secrets law. Japan doesn't have like a classified, this document's classified, you could be prosecuted if you share it with anybody. Japan doesn't have that, which makes America very nervous about sharing like North Korean satellite intelligence from the CIA to Japan, because Japan doesn't have any real means to protect it. And so Japan has said, if we want to be a trusted member of the international intelligence community, which you may have heard the story that Japan actually has a version of the CIA, but apparently there was like a list of the names and addresses of every employee of Japan's CIA was like leaked on the internet and published like 20 years ago, just around the time that I came to Japan. So they're not seen as being very good. Given how terrible their reputation is, they probably are a lot better than their reputation indicates. But part of trying to Abe's goal of sort of normalizing Japan's sort of defense relationship with particularly with the US, and earning the necessary trust to be able to increase its role. Japan has to have a state secrets law, of course, particularly the Communist Party, but generally the opposition. The Communist Party, very skeptical of this sort of thing because, well, one, there's a broad discretion that they can make anything a secret and that they can prosecute you for sharing it if you do that. The Communist Party knows about effectively where in the post-war period or the post-occupation period, the Communist Party in Japan, like in a lot of countries, Western countries, democratic countries, was subject to spying and surveillance by the Japanese state and harassment. So a lot of the members of the Communist Party are very suspicious of this law and the powers that it will give and that they can be abused. And there was a particularly ugly incident in the parliament where there were two Communist Party legislators who actually went up and were pretty much beating on the justice minister, who was being very non-confrontational. Her handlers did an awesome job of getting her out of there. They sort of, one guy came in and just physically stood between these guys who were basically spitting in her face, like screaming at her, and she was just looking away. And they came up and got in between and sort of hustled her out. It's funny. This is a situation where the government shouldn't be looking good, but the opposition made themselves look terrible. But I understand the emotion of the communists about this law, but they give the whole game away when they act the way that they acted. The other law that's very controversial right now is that Japan has this famous, oh God, I've just realized I want to tell you about the Lockheed scandal. What am I going to do? I'll tell you about the Lockheed scandal. In the 1970s, the Japanese government had a contract with the Lockheed Corporation, the airplane corporation, for a whole bunch of airplanes, and they had given that scandal. Basically, the Lockheed Corporation had won this Japanese national government contract partly by paying a lot of bribes to a lot of politicians, including the Prime Minister Tanaka Kakue. And this scandal, the prosecution of this bribery scandal against the Prime Minister of Japan from Lockheed Corporation, brought down the government. And this was Tanaka Kakue was like one of the most powerful prime ministers and politicians ever in Japanese politics. So the idea that he could be brought down by a prosecutor who found bribery was kind of remarkable, and it was kind of a sign that Japan's sort of justice system works. Come forward to today, when Abe came in, he was able to appoint someone who was politically very favorable to him as the new chief investigator, chief of the investigative branch of government. And basically, there's been a lot of speculation that because this guy's kind of an Abe crony, there have been a lot of scandals involving the government that they haven't investigated because they're friends of Abe. And people knew that his retirement age was coming up, and the next person who's coming through was basically they know who the next person's going to be, and they figure he's going to be a lot more independent, a lot more ready to investigate, government scandals and whatnot. And just when this looked like it was about to happen, the government decided that they were going to pass a law to extend the retirement age of the current guy to basically match. Abe's got like 2 more years in power, and they're extending the retirement age by 2 years. So I believe the implication is that it looks like they're trying to keep a crony in the head of the chief investigator of the police branch of Japan as a crony in power while Abe is still in power. And so it looks like a way that they're trying to avoid. They're trying to manipulate the police and judicial branch of the government. through this law to extend the retirement age. Now, bear in mind that right now the retirement age is being shifted from 60 to 65, and it's being done throughout the entire bureaucracy. So this law, the government's saying this is just part of the process they're doing to extend the retirement age of all bureaucrats right now. They're allowing them to work longer, and this is something that they're not just picking out this one branch to do. But this particular one is drawing a lot of attention, and it requires its own special law to be passed. So right now, and a lot of celebrities have been coming up and saying that, yeah, you know what, the question, I think the litmus test, and the former prosecutor who did the Lockheed case has come forward and said this is tainting the independence of the law enforcement and judiciary. This is the government basically showing that they can control who gets to police them. This is a step towards authoritarianism. So that prosecutor's come out of retirement and said, I'm against this. So it is quite controversial. They are trying to use the COVID-19 thing as a kind of a smokescreen for it and to slip it through. The opposition's been very noisy, and it's gotten a lot of attention lately with people tweeting about it, and it's been stopped in Parliament. So it is actually a really interesting thing. And I don't know where I am on this, actually. I understand that generally extending the retirement age is happening for everybody. There shouldn't be cronies in any of these roles in the first place. It does look very convenient. It is a good chance, given kind of the suspicion that it's generating. It's bad. It's a bad look for the government at a time that people are not, happy with the way that the national government's handling everything. So that's an interesting thing. Oh, this is a whole other thing, man. I said I would finish early tonight, but this is the story that was featured on BBC. It's worth looking at. You should read it yourself. It's awesome. It talks about how Japan, when I came to Japan in 1999, Japan was one of 2 countries in the world that had not yet authorized the pill, the contraceptive pill for women, for contraceptive purposes. I think it was authorized in limited cases for women who had menstrual pains or whatever, so for certain purposes, but not as contraception. And only Japan and North Korea in the entire world had forbidden this. And they were the reasons for it being challenged and held back. The debate publicly, politicians in Parliament were saying, well, this is what brought feminism into America, was having the contraceptive pill, and look at how it disrupted society there. Do we really want the disruption of true Japanese values by women being able to decide when they get pregnant or not? People were saying this. You think they're open today? They were open back then. There was even more of a conspiracy angle on this, that there were people saying that, gynecologists in Japan make so much money off abortions. Basically, you hear less about it now, but I heard a lot about it when I was in the 90s, when I was coming to Japan, that it was pretty common for people. It was basically like a form of late contraception in Japan. There's no particular religious or societal stigma. It's nothing like the debate around abortion like in America. But of course, setting aside the moral questions about it, just for the women themselves, who, if you have a couple of abortions, it has a big physical toll. But this was what was happening as a result of women not really being able to control their own contraception, and men not being very forthright about it or responsible about it either. The greatest irony was pointed out that in 1999, when this happened, a few months before the pill was authorized, which had taken over 20 years to do, Viagra was approved within 6 months. It was fast-tracked. Normally, any kind of prescription medicine in Japan takes like years to be approved. It takes normally like 3 or 4 years. And it got fast-tracked and passed through Parliament. They held a special session to give it a special exceptional passing in 6 months to allow Viagra. And people are pointing out, you've been holding up the pill for women for 20 years, and when Viagra comes in, these octogenarian politicians rammed it through like it was the cure for cancer. So it was absolutely outrageous. And that's partly what gave the pill the nudge it needed to get through. Still, even when it was made legal, when it was authorized, it wasn't widely used. A lot of people still had heard a lot of propaganda against it. A lot of doctors didn't recommend it. But a really interesting story, and it was a big topic at the time that I came here, so that's there. Korea having a second wave, no getting smug about that at all. That is going to happen here. That is Ghosts of Christmas Future. That is going to happen in Japan. So take notes, and the Koreans have handled it really well. Credit to them. Great article here from TechCrunch on setting up a home vlogging space, which I'd like to do. I wish my computer could handle USB 3, and then I could set up my GH3 camera better as a camera for this. But yes, anyway, that's pretty good. Sumo Wrestler died. Oh man, geez, this is another one. Okay, super quick version of this. This week, the youngest victim of coronavirus in Japan, a sumo wrestler, 28 years old. So first of all, he tried, when he fell really, really sick, the people at his stable tried contacting the local health bureau to arrange for a test, and they couldn't get through to the local health bureau. The lines were jammed. Apparently it was a weekend, and there was information that you could go a different way to find out, how to get a test. But for whatever reason, they didn't know that, and for 2 days they were stuck, unable to get a test. Then when they tried taking him to hospitals, he was getting turned away from hospitals. Took him, again, he got into a taxi, and I think it took 2 days before he could even get a hospital that was willing to look at him. When he finally got a test after 4 days, they found that he was positive. They put him in a hospital bed, and he got immediately terrible, and he was basically fighting for his life for nearly 3 weeks, and then he died. Kind of an archetype of all the very worst things you've heard about, getting turned away from hospitals, being unable to even call or get through on the testing helpline, unable to get tested, unable to get medical help, and he died. Tragic case, and really shines a light on the very worst aspects of the way that Japan's been handling this, and what everyone is. I mean, when everyone is cooperating with social distancing, they're not cooperating because Japanese are obedient people. I hear people saying that so many times, and it's so ridiculous. Japanese are not obedient. They don't do what Abe tells them to do, and they're not like inherently more responsible or hygienic. It's not that. It's that they know that this could happen to them. They're afraid. They're afraid, legitimately, they're afraid that they could be stuck with this disease, and they know that they're not going to get through on get a PCR. They don't know if they're going to get a PCR test. They know that they could be turned away from 50 hospitals and not be able to find a hospital before they need it. They know that they could be told to go home and wait for a week and call us if it gets bad, and end up dying when it suddenly turns badly at home and they can't get help. This is why people are socially distancing. That's why people are cooperating. And this is why the government's approval ratings have been terrible, because there haven't been tests. So why was he turned away? Well, the same reason the hospitals turned lots of people away. They didn't have the capacity. They didn't want to risk a cluster infection at their own hospital. I mean, you're running a perfectly clean, good hospital here. Why would you want to stink it up with sick people? The government's launched an investigation into why this was a problem before COVID-19, by the way. Women in labor is another big problem, where you have unscheduled people needing emergency visits to hospitals, and hospitals just don't want to deal with them. And there are cases of ambulances driving around. This is the thing since last year, driving all over Tokyo, getting rejected from dozens of hospitals because no one wants to take an emergency risky patient. They don't want to have someone coming in with complications that they don't treat right. They don't want to they claim to not have the beds, or they're on staff available or whatever. But this is something which, again, you talk about why the government's approval rating is going down. It's because they know this is what's going to happen to them. So really, really sad, tragic, awful case that happened this week. That's me running. This is, again, it's in spite of that sort of case, like the sumo wrestler. That could have been 200,000 people like in America. But fortunately, it hasn't become that. But it certainly isn't through great policy, but that said, it's improving. The Japanese government has a slow and steady approach to everything, and it's not always the best thing, but I do trust the data that I see, at least knowing what that data is, and I trust that it is improving, and I trust and I hope that they're learning from the incredible number of mistakes that they're making, and that we're going to have better testing and a better idea. We're going to be able to deal with the second and third wave much better than we've dealt with the first. We're learning from these lessons. 100 top airports. 4 Japanese airports made the world's top 10 airports. Nagoya, Narita, and Haneda. Haneda is like number 2. Singapore is number 1. Not that we're going to see an airport anytime very soon, but Haneda is awesome for me. A good airport is an airport you can get from the plane to a taxi in 15 minutes with your suitcase, and you can do that in Changi, and you can do that in Haneda. We're sitting around waiting in long queues for immigration, and then long queues for your suitcase, and then long queues for customs, and then ages to get, then a long queue to get on a bus or a taxi or a train. You can just basically almost non-stop walk from the airplane to the taxi at Haneda, and not always, but certainly most flights I take, and that's why I go out of my way to choose Haneda. It's awesome. Korea's got a second wave. I was just talking about that. That is the Lockheed scandal prosecutor saying, don't do that thing. This is interesting where, when they did the antibody tests in Tokyo, it shows that Tokyo's probably got a 0.6% infection rate, at least, but early days. And they're going to do 400,000 more tests. The school year is probably going to shift. Wow, it's gone late tonight. Almost done. The school year, the debate about shifting it to September, it seems like a good idea. Everybody's gone all Shia LaBeouf. Just do it. They're saying that. And I get it, just do it, but it's not easy. There are a lot of considerations here. They're going to need extra teachers. They're going to need the class sizes for the new school year. If you take 6 years, if you buffer extra 6 months of kids, and you throw them into the first year class, those are going to be 60 kid classes in schools that are used to 40 kids. And you need extra teachers in classes, and so to get the infrastructure for that, all the laws associated with this, there's a lot of setting up for this. Japan is slow and steady. There's talk about just ramming it through, but people are starting to appreciate that it's not as easy as that. And I think that they've realized that it's a good idea and they should do it. Hopefully it's not going to get blocked, but that is it's not going to happen this year. It's probably going to happen next year, and the school year this year is just going to be delayed. I think in Tokyo, if things keep going as they're going, the kids will probably be going back to school in June, but we'll see. The coronavirus cash handouts, which is just it's a bribe, more or less. It's an economic stimulus. It's ridiculous that the idea that you could apply for this online if you have the plastic card. Don't even think about applying for this on the internet. It's a disaster, and you can just apply by mail. Apply for it by mail. You'll get it faster, and that's the only way that they're really expecting to deal with it. This is the issues with schools. These are recent cases in Tokyo. That's it. I am 1 hour 15 minutes. I did not expect to take that long. I hope you enjoyed the show anyway. Yes, Steve from Berkeley. I really don't much to say tonight. I guess I did. Sorry about that. Well, anyway, remember, if you like, please like. I do appreciate it when you do that. It's been awesome having you all here. And the J-Vlog, we're here in 1999. We're here in 2000, bounced a bit, and I'm back. Good to have you back. Did not talk about butter, and I won't talk about butter. Don't take me there. It's a dark place. I'm not going there. Have a good week, everybody. Stay safe, of course. Remember, socially distance, wear masks, be responsible. Sing the Rick Astley song. Sing Never Gonna Give You Up while washing your hands. I find that helps. And see you next week. Same time, same place. And really great to have all of you here as always. And see you next week. Follow me on Twitter if you want to see updates through the week. Or have a chat with me about anything. Boom. Peace. It's hot. It's like, check this out. This is like with the lights on. I turn the aircon off when I'm doing this show. You can actually see here. It's like 28.4 degrees. I'm going to turn on the aircon now. It's pretty... I'm going to start sweating. See you later.